With the Charlotte Hornets eliminated from the play-in tournament on Wednesday night, it comes down to the Atlanta Hawks or Cleveland Cavaliers as Miami's playoff opponent. We'll break down the pros and cons of facing each before giving our final predictions on how the first round series will play out. This is the preview you've been waiting for, and you'll only find it right here on Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Friday edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat. However you may be listening or watching on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app, thank you so much for making us your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. Still a couple days away from the start of the playoffs, at least for Miami, but we've got a little clarity about who they might be facing in their first round series. But before we do that, just a programming note quickly. We're recording this on a Thursday evening. And of course, we won't know exactly who Miami will face. But I did want to mention that we are going to be bringing you all the playoff coverage that you'd be expecting after every game. We'll be going live, whether this on a weekend, whether we recorded 5 episodes or not. We'll be recording every episode after each playoff game for Miami throughout the rest of their run in the playoffs. So you'll get that coverage here and only here on Locked On Heat. We'll move on quickly here and then talk a little bit about the Cleveland Cavaliers, because they're awaiting the Atlanta Hawks, who disposed of the Charlotte Hornets. I have to eat a little crow on that one because I thought the Hornets would be able to get a little momentum going.
I am 1-0 in our predictions so far, David.
Yeah, I guess so. 1-1. Well, no, you're 2-0. I am 1-1 because we both predicted that Brooklyn would move past Cleveland pretty easily, and they did. You know, when your starting backcourt starts off the game going 0 for 14 combined between Terry Rozier and LaMelo Ball, not going to be a great night, and they certainly were behind the 8 ball against a potent offense led by Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks. So we'll talk about that in the next segment. But again, here in this segment, we want to talk a little bit about the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are awaiting the Hawks on Friday. And we just got some news right before we started recording this. Shams Charania of The Athletics indicating that Jared Allen, All-Star center Jared Allen, is targeting this Friday as a potential return. He'll be making his return to join the Cleveland Cavaliers as they take on the Hawks for that game of the play-in tournament there. So this might be a make-or-break situation for the Cavaliers, and obviously they want to be as close to full strength as possible. Allen's return, a significant one there, at least in my opinion. Wes, what do you think of the news?
Oh, it's huge, right? And I think there's some key wording in the report that Jared Allen will attempt to play. By all the indications, that means that he will. We'll see if there's a minutes restriction, if it's a broken finger, so he should be like mobile. There's no reason why he should even have a minutes restriction with a broken finger. You could still do cardio, you could still run up and down the court. Yeah, I mean, he's not shooting, but like he wasn't really shooting before he had a broken finger. So, defensively is where they need him, and he'll be out there. Maybe he's not quite the rebounder that he was before and all this stuff, but it's a fractured finger, and we'll see. I think this is huge. Because, like you said, he's an all-star. Darius Garland is an all-star. You have a team now with 2 all-stars in a play-in game, which it's winner take all, right? Not to say that Atlanta doesn't. They have their all-star. They have Trae Young, but this evens the field a little bit. Especially when you consider how it is that the Cavs would win this game. It's going to be on the defensive end, and it's going to be with size and rebounding, winning sort of that battlefield on the glass, and doing all the things. And Jared Allen also brings an element of vertical spacing that offense doesn't really have, maybe a little bit with Evan Mobley, but that's not really his game. And so you think like with a pick and roll partner between Jared Allen and Darius Garland, that should help them in this game against Atlanta too.
Yeah, good point. So those are the keys to winning for Cleveland against the Hawks, and it would likely be the keys to winning against Miami as well. And that's what we're doing here. We're looking at the pros and cons of facing the Cavaliers in the first round series. So right off the bat, let's get into the pros first. For Miami, I'd say a lot of it is the experience factor. I think you've got a much more motivated group, a more talented group, if you will. I think they're much more clear as to who they are as a team at this point in the season. And I think they're much more focused, and they won't be dealing with the added stress of trying to reincorporate an all-star level caliber player in like Jared Allen. So I think Miami goes in there after a week of rest, which we'll talk about later on the show as well, because I know that's a concern for a lot of Heat fans. But to go in there having practiced all week, mentally prepared to take on an opponent, and I think that's a huge plus for Miami in terms of style of play. What would you say might be one of the pros to facing a Cleveland Cavaliers team?
Well, the Cleveland size thing is interesting, especially if they're going to have Jared Allen back. And I think with the way that the Heat play with this new rotation, with spacing
Mm,
the floor and all these things, there is an opportunity there to put like guys like Lauri Markkanen on an island, right? Like Lauri Markkanen really struggled with the Kevin Durant matchup in that first
right,
playing game, late, and that's somebody who I think like Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Kyle Lowry can exploit. Right.
right.
And then when you're spacing the floor the way that Miami has during the 6 game win streak that has taken them into the playoffs, nobody counts the Orlando game. So I
Victor Oladipo does.
um I think that there's something there. They don't shoot the ball very well or very often from the perimeter, Cleveland. And
Right.
so I also think with the way that Miami is shooting the ball with a high volume, right? Sort of starting to approach and kind of nudge that 43-point attempt per game number.
Right.
That's really going to help them because if Max and Duncan and Kyle and even Jimmy, Tyler Hero, if these guys have it, if they're shooting the ball the way that they have recently, there's no way for Cleveland to make up that margin. Darius Garland is awesome, but that's about it, from the 3-point range. That's all they got. And so like Larry Markkinen but he's not shooting them at like that high of a volume compared to what these guys are doing. So I think the style of play favors Miami. I also think, and we said this the first time these teams played earlier in the season, like even if the Cleveland like triple towers thing kind of throws them off balance or something, if they win the battle on the boards and all that stuff, like if it just throws them for a loop in game one for whatever reason, Eric Spoelstra is so good at adjusting and finding weaknesses and picking at weaknesses. And Evan Mobley's great. Jared Allen is an all pro, but like, I don't think any of them are at that level where they're unexploitable, right? And so even if this size of Cleveland throws Miami out of whack a little bit at first, if they get if they just land a haymaker to start the series, I just trust Eric Spoelstra and that coaching staff to make the correct adjustments and not fall prey to whatever it is that Cleveland can do.
You're a good point. Good point. However, that size is a concern. Although Miami might be able to eventually figure it out and exploit it for at least a great portion early on in the series, if Allen is at full strength. I do think it's a significant con in Miami's against Miami, in that attacking the paint is not going to be as easy. They're going to give up points. They're going to give up rebounds. It's going to limit their transition opportunities on offense, something that Miami has thrived on all season long.
Right.
You're also less likely to attack a guy like Mobley and Allen when they're kind of holding the paint there. Markkanen, obviously not as much of a concern. Kevin Love, not as much a concern defensively. But between those other two players there, you've got significant size there in terms of being able to impact what Miami can do in the painted area. We're counting on Bam Adebayo to be aggressive and to look to score, something that's less likely with Allen guarding him for significant stretches there. So I think he's going to have to look to attack early on by setting things up from that mid-range game. Allen can go out a little bit further. He's not just a shot blocker. He's a versatile enough defender where he can hinder Bam when he's even 15 to 18 feet out. So that's a problem there.
A Jared Allen stat, really quick.
Yeah.
Miami right now, they're 1-2 against Cleveland this season, right? And they've been outscored by the Cavaliers by a total of 8 or by an average of 8.3 points per game in that 3-game series over the regular season. So Jared Allen played in 2 of those 3 games against the Heat.
The first
and the only one that the Cavs lost was the game that Jared Allen did not play in. So the Cavs, in other words, the Cavs are 2-0 against the Heat while they have Jared Allen available. Of course, that was before he fractured his finger, but still, in those 2 games, he was really good, man. Like 17 points on 6 for 6 shooting in the first game. or in the second game, sorry, and then 19 points on 7 for 8 shooting. So he's literally missed one shot attempt against Miami all season long. He combined for 19 rebounds in those 2 games. He was awesome, right? And that is definitely a concern. Bam Adebayo is going to have his hands full. But I also think like one of the pros of facing a team like Cleveland is that you don't really worry about getting eliminated by the Cavaliers in the first round, right? But it could be a little bit of a tough matchup because of all the things that we're talking about. And because it specifically challenges Bam Adebayo. And I wrote this earlier in the week, but I really do think that it's sort of Jimmy. As much as we talk about the depth and everything that this team has, the Heat will only go as far as Jimmy and Bam take them. And in a first round series that kind of challenges Bam right from the start and kind of gets him playing at a playoff level and can kind of get him to raise his game early in the postseason, that could kind of end up being the best thing that happens to Bam and the Heat.
I see what you're getting at, and yet I keep coming back to when he was basically wiped off the floor by Brook Lopez yesterday. And I'm not saying that Jared Allen and Brook Lopez are the same player, but we're talking about something that's always been a problem for Bam to overcome is the size and length of a defender. And that's what Allen presents there. He's tall, he's long, he's a shot blocker. So I don't know. I get it. Like, you want to be forged by the fire, so to speak. You want to be able to go in there and say, okay, this is the ultimate test. We go through it and we find a way to overcome it. The flip side of that is all of a sudden Bam looks mediocre and we have to go through a whole offseason of hearing, oh, Bam's not an all-star player. Why did they sign him to this kind of money and things of that sort? I don't believe that's the case. I think it's somewhere in the middle, as always.
Well, if he gets wiped off the floor by Jared Allen, then that conversation should be there, man. Like, if Jared Allen is just way better than Bam this entire series, and this series goes like 6 or 7 games, something what nobody expects, and Miami gets their hands full in a way we don't expect, then that conversation is deserved. But again, I go back to the conversation I had with Bam late last week. He took last year very personally. He took the losing in the finals to the Lakers in the bubble very personally. And I do think he's going. And like last year's series was really weird. It was just so weird. And
no, I know. I get
it was. I'm not saying that it won't be difficult. You're exactly right. Like, this is the kind of thing that Bam has had problems with. There's guys like Jarrett Allen. Yeah. But if you're trying to find a pro to playing a team like the Cavs, it could be the fact that there is, I like how you said, the forged by fire type deal. Like, they need, in order to do what they need to do this year, they need a higher level of Bam than probably we've even seen in the regular season when he's even taken a leap on both ends of this year, right? And so you only get that with a little bit of pressure. You only get that with a little bit of this. And so, I'm not saying it's the best thing ever for him to play a guy like Jared Allen every series, but maybe it just triggers something is all I'm saying.
Look, that's the optimistic hope, I think.
It is.
And it makes a lot of sense. I'm also thinking in terms of like not X's and O's necessarily, but just in roster construction. With the return of Jared Allen, there's a good chance that Karis LeVert reverts to a bench role. You've got Isaac Okoro in there in the starting lineup, perhaps as a wing defender. LeVert is your spark plug off the bench, so a la Tyler Herro, but not anywhere near as good. Yeah. So you've got 2 6 men of the year there in Karis LeVert and Kevin Love facing Tyler Herro there. So that should be an interesting matchup as well. I look,
Miami's depth, even with that though, I like Miami's depth more.
For sure. But that was the reasoning behind acquiring Karis LeVert. Like, we didn't see it in the Brooklyn Nets matchup, but LeVert was basically brought on to be a guy who can spell Darius Garland as a primary ball handler, initiate offense and things of that sort. And while he's certainly willing to do that, he just wasn't creating plays for others, and he certainly wasn't finishing plays for himself. So he's up and down.
Somebody who could potentially attack like the Duncan Robinson, Tyler Herro second unit backcourt. Maybe something to keep an eye on if this is the series.
Former Michigan teammate, Duncan Robinson,
Oh, yeah. True.
So, interesting. We'll give our final prediction on the series later on in the show. But before we do that, we'll also talk about the Atlanta Hawks. And just a reminder that BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs. There's a good chance to place a little wager on who Miami's opponent will be.
Hawks right now are a 3-point favorite. That's a nice little line there.
I think that was before the Jared Allen news.
It was. Yeah, we'll see how that line moves for sure. You got to check BetOnline to know.
Yeah, BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, from live betting to the playoffs, esports, and much, much more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. Listen to Locked On Now with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or watch it on the Locked On NBA YouTube channel. And of course, always make sure to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to our show, make sure to do that as well. So we did it for the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'll do it for the Atlanta Hawks as well.
Yeah.
They were able to dispose of the Charlotte Hornets pretty easily, a 132-103 ass kicking on Wednesday night. They move on. And again, as you pointed out, 3-point favorites, at least before the Jared Allen news.
Right.
So they're missing their all-star-ish sort of center in John Collins as well. He's been out with a fractured finger as well. I guess it happens a lot for big men. And he is not expected to make a return. No updates on him, at least none yet. He is listed currently, I think, as day-to-day on injury reports. So he's been doing some on-court work, going 4-on-4, but not full 5-on-5. Not sure what the holdup is from Nate McMillan's perspective, whether or not he wants to reintegrate him. If you listened to our show or watched our show yesterday with Michael Pina, he did have a concern about Collins' impact in a matchup against Miami because Collins is a three-point shooter, at least somewhat of a shooter. He's also a lob threat, a rebounding edge there. He's a good player, a very good player, and I think it would certainly throw Miami somewhat off kilter there. But let's move forward with the assumption that they probably will not have him in a series against the Miami Heat. What do you see as some of the pros for Miami in terms of a matchup with the Atlanta Hawks?
It all starts with Atlanta's defense, right? They can't stop anybody, and they haven't stopped anybody all season. The only team that they could stop is Charlotte, and Charlotte just had no interest in scoring that entire game. So that was more of a self-inflicted wound, I think, from the Hornets. But I just don't I think there are some people that will look at, hey, Atlanta's got Trae Young, they've got Clint Capella. Maybe they even do get John Collins back, and they've got all these guys. And they kind of made a run, and they disposed of the Hornets very easily. And maybe you were sleeping on the team that made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. I could see people talking themselves into that.
Yep.
There's no way they win that series. There is just no with that defense, you don't just figure it out all of a sudden defensively. Even if Trae Young is having a career year, even after last year's career year, he's awesome. He's going to make an All-NBA team, and he should. He deserves it. He's great. But Miami's got a bunch of dudes that can guard him. They could switch on him, a bunch of guys onto him. All the stuff that Trae Young likes to do, which is basically just run, pick, and roll over and over again. Guess what? Bam Adebayo might win Defensive Player of the Year because he's so good at stopping that stuff, okay? So, and you still got Jimmy Butler. You still got PJ Tucker. You still got Kyle Lowry. You still got guys off the bench like Caleb Martin and Gabe Vincent that you could throw at him. I'm not saying that they're gonna keep him scoreless. I'm just saying of any team suited to actually beat the Hawks, I kind of like Miami's chances because the Achilles heel for Miami is scoring in the half court, and that's been less of a case since the rotation changes, but whatever. Atlanta ain't stopping anybody in the half court, and they're not stopping anybody in transition defense either. And Miami loves to kick out, not even after misses, but after opponent makes and all these things. Right. They're the best team in the league at scoring off of defensive rebounds, Miami is. Atlanta's not all of a sudden figure out how to defend in transition against one of the best transition attacks in the league in Miami. So that's the pro, is that all of Miami's strength. I don't know. I think that series could be a sweep.
Well, we'll save that. Save that juicy tidbit for the last.
It could be. It could be. I didn't predict it. It could be. It's different.
No, I mean, listen. Miami. I mean, Atlanta. You look at their roster, and what they have 1+ defender in their starting lineup, DeAndre Hunter, and that's
Herter's okay. They treat him like an all-star or like their stopper, but he's not that. But he's all right.
Capella is okay-ish even at this point in his career
in certain spaces, right? But once you put him on the perimeter.
Yeah, not so good.
Barbecue chicken.
Their backups, DeLon Wright.
He's good.
Okongwu.
Solid. Okongwu's good. Yeah, all solid.
Cavaliers. Yeah, I mean, they're good defenders, but this isn't like that. They're not going to get playing time like this. They're not going to get the kind of significant minutes that they had during the regular season, especially if Collins returns. Miami can't expose them a lot. Miami certainly has the depth issue. I think they certainly have the experience. Atlanta's run to the Eastern Conference Finals notwithstanding, they're a better coach team. They're a
Yeah.
deeper team. They understand the necessity of making adjustments. This is a team that in years past, I think, would have presented much more of a challenge for a different version, a different iteration of this Heat team because they're younger, they're pluckier, right? They can leak out in transition. Miami's slower pace of play doesn't necessarily lend itself well. Given all that, the pace in the playoffs is going to slow down. Atlanta was able to capitalize on that last season based on some otherworldly performances from Trae Young and others, but I don't think that's likely to be the case
Well,
against
last year
Miami.
they were better defensively too. I don't know what it was, but like this year they're carrying themselves like they could flip the switch, and I'm like, why? Because you made the Eastern Conference Finals and got wiped off the floor by Milwaukee. Like, cool,
The
dude.
dimmer,
Like, there's
the
no
dimmer, as
right.
you put it.
The dimmer. The other thing too about Atlanta, and you talk to people that like cover the Hawks and stuff, and they always say as soon as they get punched in the mouth, they don't really come back at you. And that's kind of been their problem. That's why I kind of picked them in that Hornets series because the Hornets are more of a finesse team, right?
Yeah.
And they're not really going to punch you in the mouth, right? They're just going to maybe make like LaMelo might get hot from 3-point range in the first quarter, and then that's how they win games. But like,
not on Wednesday,
right? So what's Miami going to do in this game? They're going to punch Atlanta in the mouth. Like Jimmy Butler is just going to hunt down switches and mismatches. He's going to be like, I dare you to guard me in the post. He's going to play bully ball. They're going to get downhill. They're going to punch Atlanta in the mouth. The Hawks all season long. Look, if they prove me wrong, good for you, Atlanta. Awesome for you. But the entire year, you haven't done that. Every time you've gotten punched in the mouth, you've stumbled backwards and fell over. And that's what Miami's going to do.
If there's an X factor here that I'm concerned of and kind of leaning in towards the cons now, it's Danilo Gallinari. That's a guy who has been a challenge for Miami.
I can tell you as somebody who had Danilo Gallinari in his fantasy team, I'm not that worried about him.
Well, he had a big game against the Charlotte Hornets, but then again, everybody has a big game against the Charlotte Hornets, it seems. And that's just the kind of guy that seems likely to catch fire. And it's always in past matchups against Miami, it's always been like that. He kind of just they're more like impactful shots. Like Miami makes a run, or they're kind of trying to pull away there, and then Gallinari hits a three. Like that's the player I'm most concerned of. Like Trae Young he's gonna have his nights. Like even yesterday, he scored 24 points. Everybody goes, "Oh wow, 24 points." Guess what? He takes 24 shots to get there. Not great. He took 8 free throws and hit 7 of those. And so his shooting is going to be his shooting. The playmaking, however, Trae Young's playmaking is definitely something that I'm not sure could necessarily pose a huge threat against Miami, but it's definitely a concern because he does break down players because his range is so limited, or at least his willingness to shoot from any kind of range is a problem. And so given that, he's going to attack the basket. He's going to get foul calls because he weighs 150 pounds soaking wet. He's going to kick it out, spray it to perimeter shooters, including Herder, including Hunter, including Gallinari. Bogdanovich is a spark plug, very much like Herro in that sense.
That's the guy I'm looking at is Bogdanovich. If he played sixth man all year, he would have a better case to challenge Tyler for this sixth man of the year award. I mean, he probably wouldn't still, but you get kind of what I'm saying. And no, I think the Trae Young point is a good one. Like, if there's a path for Atlanta to win this series, and I don't think that there is, but if there were one, it would be like, first of all, Trae Young could be the best player on the court in this series.
Yeah, you said
and
that
Atlanta
before.
could still lose, but he could be. And to your point, the playmaking and everything like that. If all these guys get hot, if the Bogdanoviches, the DeLon Wrights, the Herders, the Andre Hunters, if Collins come back and he's shooting 40% from 3 like he does, maybe they could just shoot Miami off the court and doesn't matter how bad they are defensively. But that is sort of the only way. And I still just trust Miami's defense, right? Like Atlanta's offense and Trae Young, they're awesome, but it's very much just like, hey, let's run this high screen and roll thing between Trae and Capella. And if that doesn't work, then we're just going to throw up a shot, or hopefully Trae Young gets fouled. Like there's not a whole lot of counters. They don't have like layers of their pick and roll game the way that like Chris Paul and Phoenix does, right? It's just sort of one pick and roll. If it doesn't work, I'm going to kind of come back. I'm going to do that Steve Nash thing. I'm going to come back out, and then you're going to set another screen right in the middle of the floor at the same spot. We're just going to do it again. And so I just, against a smart team like Miami, I just don't see that really working and generating shots consistently over a 7-game series. But I for the sake of the exercise, that would be the con, is that Trae Young just lights them up.
All good concerns. We'll finally give you our predictions for each of these series in the next segment. Talk about a little bit what Miami has been doing leading up to their playoff matchup. But before we do that, just a reminder that this show is brought to you by Built Bar. Look, it's tough to stick to a diet. We understand how challenging it can be, especially now when you're watching all this great playoff basketball. You want to grab snacks, you want to grab the nachos and things of that sort. Well, I totally get it. But if you're looking to try and be a little bit healthier or change your diet in any way, then the recommendation for you, as it's been for a long, long time now, is Built Bar. So many great flavors. It's all the nutrients you're looking for in a protein bar without sacrificing any of the taste. They're soft, easy to chew, 100% covered in chocolate, and so many delicious flavors to choose from. You can get a mixed box with all of your favorites, or you can get just a box of each of your favorites, whichever you want, and share them with friends, family, coworkers. I'm sure they'll be appreciative of that. So go over now to built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15 and you get 15% off your order, but use the promo code LOCK15 so you can get 15% off your next order of Built Bars at built.com. And while you're at it, if you need parts for your car or truck, trust me, go to a family-owned business that's been serving auto parts customers online for over 20 years. That's rockauto.com. You can go to a chain store, see if they have the parts you're looking for. They'll look it up on their computer, ask you questions. The whole process sucks. Nobody wants to go through that. You feel uncomfortable. You're not sure if you're supposed to be asking for this part or that, if it's an EX or an LX or somewhere in between. You're not even sure. Why go through all that? You have access to computers in your pocket or at home, the same computers they have at those stores, which means you've got access to rockauto.com. Their website's so easy to use and navigate. You'll find everything you're looking for with just a few easy clicks, and you can save time, save money. I've used it before, saved hundreds of dollars rather than taking my wife's car to a body shop or anything like that. Whether you're a do-it-yourselfer like myself, or if you're a mechanic or anybody in between, all levels of people looking to make improvements to their car, rockauto.com is the place for you. So go right now to rockauto.com. See all the parts available for your car or truck. And then when you go to the section that says, "How'd you hear about us?" write the phrase "locked on" so they know we sent you. It's amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That is rockauto.com. Just a reminder that you can always reach us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com or via Twitter using the hashtag AskLOHeat. And always, please, be sure to subscribe to the show and leave a review. We love to hear from you. Just because the playoffs are here doesn't mean we're going anywhere. In fact, we're ramping up our coverage to get you all the information that you need. So make sure to keep it here on Locked On Heat. Uh, Wes, it's been an interesting week for Miami. I know a lot of
Mhm.
people are concerned that the Heat are going to be rusty and things of that sort. That they're going to be a little bit shaky because they've had all this time off, that they don't know how to prepare for whatever first round opponent, whether it's Cleveland or Atlanta. They're not sure whether it was Charlotte or Brooklyn. There are all these different options. And when we talked about doing this show, one of the things that we talked about was kind of dispelling with all that. Miami has started off the week as positively as you could imagine, going off to the Bahamas for a vacation slash training opportunity. A number of players going there. Was it Tyler Herro, Jimmy Butler,
Yeah.
a
Kyle
handful of
Lowry,
others?
Gabe
Kyle
Vincent,
Lowry.
Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, Victor Oladipo,
Yep. Yeah.
Javante Smart, two-way guy. He got the invite.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Good for him. And look, this is the kind of bonding experience that helps teams flourish. Look, the 82
Yeah.
game season, whether you want to see it as a fan or not, is an arduous one. You're going to have bumps, ups and downs, etc. That's why that fight broke out, the fight that everybody's still thinking about to some degree, or whether or not it was the death knell for Miami's playoff chances and things of that sort. These people spend more time with each other than they do with their friends, families, and loved ones. You're going to have, you have the testosterone riding high. You've got the competitive nature that makes you one of the 400 best basketball players in the world. In a world of 7 billion people, you're one of 400. Think about that from no matter how bad a player you might seem, even Duncan Robinson, he's actually one of the best 400 players in the world. So that's something to consider. So there's a lot of tension there. But you know what? The season's over. You reap the benefits of getting that first seed. This is what you play for. This is why you win 53 games. So you can take these breaks. And even these breaks, not exactly a break. You're practicing. You're getting ready for your next opponent. You're staying sharp and letting your body recover. That bodes well for Kyle Lowry. That bodes well for Jimmy Butler. That bodes well
PJ
for every
Tucker,
member of the team. Absolutely.
we
Every member
forgot,
of the team.
is
Yeah.
dealing with a calf strain. Like, look, all these people complaining about the fact that they only have one full day. I think it's like 36 total hours between
Yeah.
finding out who
The
their
1 o'clock
opponent
tip off.
is
Yeah.
and tip off. And 1 o'clock. Relax, dude. Like, it's not a storyline. I look. I asked Udonis Haslem straight up. I was like, look, it was funny. I actually said, hey, balance being the number 1 seed and balancing trying to get a week off and then having to turn around quickly. And then he stops me. He goes, there are no week offs in this building. Rephrase that question. I go, good point. A week between games. And he goes, that's better. And I was like, okay, a week between games, or, basically having 1 full day to prep for your first round opponent. And he blew it off. He was just like, big deal. You take the home court and everything that comes with it every day of the week. And, Duncan Robinson said it, I think it was after the Orlando game, the final game of the season. He was asked about it, and he's like, yeah, we've seen all these, and Eric Spoelstra said this too. We've seen all these teams 3 or 4 times each. It's not like there's no surprises. They haven't added any new players like this. We know what these teams are, especially in the case of Atlanta, who's in your division. And at that, before Charlotte was eliminated in your division, like, these teams. It's not there are going to be no surprises in game 1, right? So you go into this game like you would any other game, and you play the game, and then it's a 7-game series. Like, you have opportunities for any sort of adjustments that you have to make. So if game 1 goes a little unexpected, well, then you have the rest of the series to make adjustments from there. So it's not a thing. To me, it's not a talking point. To me, it doesn't really matter at all. It's not unfair. People don't need to cry about it. Like, it just is. Just relax. Take the week. They've done 3 straight practices, David, which I found really interesting because that's like never happened. You've got 3 straight practices now. It makes me wonder, is Eric Spoelstra installing something? Like, to reporters today, he was talking about, today being Thursday, recording this on Thursday, he's talking about, basically the whole point was just to keep yourself in rhythm and flow because, a week between games, you don't want to get rusty. In Miami, if you know how their practices are, they're not going to get rusty. I'm not worried about that. But is he taking that opportunity to install some new wrinkles in the offense? I don't think it's going to be anything drastic, but maybe, I don't know. It's just something to think about and something to monitor because, like, this is more time than he and the coaching staff have had to kind of just sit back and be like, and kind of reflect and look at things. It's more time than they've had all season to do that. And it's a good time to do it too.
And to piggyback off of what you were saying and continue to add to it, the ability to make in-game adjustments is really what defines a series. That's always the case. You can only do so much prep beforehand. And to your point, and to Duncan's point and everybody else, like, there's only so much that you can prepare for. Once you're actually there, you see the ebbs and flow of game 1 and you go, okay, this is how you prepare. This is how great teams separate themselves. We've seen champions, Miami included, be down in a series and then go, okay, now I know what to do. Best of all, you've got perhaps the second best player in today's NBA at being able to make those in-game adjustments in Jimmy Butler, be able to figure it out. So even regardless of what happens in game 1, and Kyle Lowry also, to your point, that kind of experience, be able to say, okay, this is what's required of me. This is what I need to do differently, and then move on from that point.
Yeah. And just for the record too, like, whoever they play is going to have the same amount of time to prep. It's not as if like Cleveland or Atlanta have been like waiting to play the Heat these are do or die games that they're playing all week. They're not concerned with the Heat right now. They're concerned about getting to the Heat.
Some scout is putting something together, but that's their job. That's their job.
I would bet that the Heat do actually have some of their scouts in the background prepping for these teams, but despite what they're saying, it doesn't matter. It does not matter.
So having said all that, Miami seems like they're going to be fresh. They've been putting in work. I don't anticipate this team with this level of experience and everything else having any sort of rust. We've seen this team click almost immediately after players get an extended amount of rest. You know how that, the player kind of has to be reincorporated. I like Jared Allen or something like that. No, this team is different. I think they understand a high IQ team. We've been using that terminology all season long. Eric Spoelstra has talked about this competitive group. I don't know what to anticipate that they're going to go out in game 1. And because they have home court advantage, want to be able to put a stamp earlier on the series, kind of define what happens next. Put the onus on either Atlanta or Cleveland to make those kinds of adjustments and set the tone early in their favor. So having said that, we'll launch into our predictions for each of the series. We'll start off as we did the show with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Wes, what have you got?
Oh, well, should we just predict like who wins the Atlanta-Cleveland game? And then make a prediction from there?
If you want to go that far, sure.
Because
I
I
thought we
think I
predict
don't
each of
know.
the teams.
Because I'm just curious what you think. Because before the Jaren Allen news, which literally like Shams tweeted like right before we started recording, and I had a pretty good feel. I was pretty high in Atlanta against Cleveland, but that
Yep.
was without Jared Allen. I didn't factor Jared Allen into that. But now that Allen's going to try to play here, I'm thrown off. I don't think I do have a good feel on this Atlanta Cleveland game tonight.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because you look at what happened against the Charlotte Hornets. Again, this is a subpar defense in the Hornets, but even any attack of the pick and roll that Atlanta kind of relies so heavily as part of their
Right.
offense, and you've got Allen who kind of snuffs that out. Capella's not going to be able to catch those lobs at the rim with an Allen out there. They've got the size advantage clearly, and I think Cleveland has, they have an okay defender there. Their defense is going to be able to keep Trae Young from igniting there. He's going to have one of those incredible 50-point games that he's capable of reaching in order to make this an even game. If I had to make a prediction at this point, I'm leaning more Cleveland now that they're getting Jared Allen back. I think that's more realistic. I thought they were kind of done, but this kind of could reignite them to some extent. But do you have a prediction?
I think I'm leaning with you. It's so hard because we don't really know what Jaren Allen's going to look like and how effective he's going to be coming back here. But they
I think he's
are,
gonna be fine.
yeah. I mean, Cleveland. So Cleveland lost. Well, they're 1-3 this year against Atlanta. They have 2 losses with Jaren Allen and 1 win with Jared Allen. They lost also to Atlanta at the end of the year, March 31st, without Jared Allen. They actually got blown out by Atlanta by 24 points in Atlanta. This game's going to be played in Cleveland. Cleveland is 1-1 at home against Atlanta this year. Jared Allen was really good in those games. I think the point you made about his ability to guard the pick and roll is maybe what this game comes down to, right?
Yeah.
Is Jared Allen's ability to snuff that out. Okoro can guard Trae Young.
Yep.
He held Trae Young to 3 of 5 shooting and 2 assists in that March 31st game, which is really good if Trae Young's only taken 5 attempts and only dishing out 2 assists during your time covering him. The line was Atlanta by 3, which wasn't a lot, but it was also Atlanta on the road in Cleveland. And so I wonder if with Jared Allen coming back, that kind of moves more to even. Again, I really don't have a good feel because I just don't know what Jared Allen's going to look like, but I might, with Jared Allen, be able to guard the pick and roll and then Mobley shifting back towards more of a backline help defender and being able to guard, anything that kind of leaks out from the Jared Allen defense. I might be with you. Maybe I'm going Cleveland. Like, there's some pride on the line now for the Cavs, right? Like, you went from 4th seed, 5th seed, kind of territory for so much of the year to sliding into the play-in tournament. Like, you really want to not make the playoffs after all of that. It's tough. It really is. But I'll do it with you, man. Let's do it. Let's go Cavs.
Let's go Cavs. I mean, look, I'm going to give my predictions for both, regardless. But I think, I see a series against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think Miami wins that in 5, despite the size advantage. A series against the Atlanta Hawks, I think that one goes 6.
You do?
I think that's a little. Yeah, I do actually. I think they're just a little bit more volatile in a way that I'm not comfortable with, even from a team as well coached and experienced as Miami. So that would say over Cavs in 5, over Hawks
either way. I'll go 5 games both ways.
Heat in 5. Good way to end it. And Game 5 would be back here in Miami too.
Game 5 would be back here in Miami. All right, before we sign off here, I didn't tell you about this. I have a surprise bet for you. Are you ready?
Sure, why not?
I'm going to clip this for social media. I'm putting it everywhere.
All right.
If the Heat win the finals, I'm going to send you a box of Thin Mints, and I want you to eat the Thin Mints on the show. Will you do it if the Heat win the finals?
Happily. I will.
I love it.
I will wash it down with whatever beverage of choice, usually one with alcohol in it, and I will absolutely enjoy it. Play the Tyler Herro clip.
Oh yeah. Wait, hold on. Let me get to it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I appreciate that box of Thin Mints. Hey man, if it brings me my 4th title, I'd love it. Absolutely.
If the Heat win the finals, you've heard it here, guys. It's been a running joke all year. We have not done Thin Mints for credit cookies. We will do, if they win the final game of the year, Thin Mints will be the credit cookie. And David will eat.
I will film myself
of
going
Thin
to a public supermarket and harassing a group of
Don't do that.
Girl Scouts.
I don't recommend filming yourself harassing little girls. But
Okay, you're right. You're right.
I
It's
will
usually
send you the Thin
parents.
Mints. I will
It's
take care of the
all
Thin Mints. I will send you the
right.
Thin Mints.
All right. Well, that makes that much easier because we want to avoid any kind of issues in the
Right.
future. But speaking of issues, we'll have plenty of time to cover the Miami Heat and bring up the latest on whatever's going on with the team, whether they have issues or not. We anticipate it's going to be a nice, long, and eventful and fruitful run that will culminate in my consumption of a box of Thin Mints. So make sure to continue. Make sure to continue to plug into this show. You subscribe to get all the coverage that you're come to expect and much, much more throughout the playoffs. Remember, every episode is free and available wherever you get podcasts. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B.